Hi there, I'm Sarah Kuhn. Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Ones. I am so excited for the episode today, you guys. We have an amazing guest that I can't wait to get to. I just have a couple of things to go over real quick before we get to the interview. So, the first thing that I want to tell you about is I am doing a masterclass on how to find self love, and I really hope that you will join me. It's this Thursday at 6 o'clock. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes. This subject is so very important to me. I have struggled my whole life with having enough self-confidence, having enough self-love, and it affects so many areas of my life. And once I've realized that this was a problem and have started working on it in the last 5 to 6 years, so much has changed. And really in the last year, so much has changed in my life. And I want to be able to share all of that information with you. So if you struggle with self-love or self-confidence or just that general feeling of feeling like you're not enough, this is really a course that you need to be a part of. It's completely free. Make sure that you sign up. The link for the video, it's a live video, and the link for it will be in your email. So make sure that you check your email and your spam folders as well. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about real quick is this INFJ community group that I have. You guys, it's such an amazing group. And honestly, if you're an INFJ, you really need to be a part of it. So what it is, it's a lot like Facebook, actually, except it's on a different platform and it's a lot better than Facebook because everybody that's in the INFJ community group, we're all INFJs. It's exclusive for INFJs. And everything that's in there pertains to us. So we talk about all kinds of different things, and it's such an amazing place to have this place where you can go, where you know that everybody understands and you don't have to explain things. I shared a post on social media the other day about having to make a phone call and how terrified I was to make a phone call, and I didn't really know what I was talking about. I had to ask somebody questions about something that I didn't know anything about it. And I was so nervous to make the phone call to begin with. And then it got delayed like 5 or 6 hours. And that just made me even more nervous. And then I'm trying to ask questions about something that I don't know anything about. And when I got off the phone, like my hands are shaking and I'm like, ugh. I'm sure that lady really thought that I was an idiot because I had no idea what I was talking about and I just felt completely horrible. And I thought about texting one of my friends. I thought about writing something on Facebook, but I thought, nobody's going to understand. They're going to give me some advice about how no, nobody thinks you're an idiot, just like normal placation type stuff, or they're going to be like, why are you so scared to make a phone call? That's ridiculous. But then I thought about this INFJ community group, and I thought everybody in there is an INFJ. They're all going to get it. And so I posted something in there, and every single person was like, yep, I totally get that. I feel the same way. I've done the same thing, and I promise you, you're not an idiot. Which was completely awesome because that was exactly what I needed at that moment. And even though I know that I'm not an idiot, it was just like at that point, I was like, the whole being overwhelmed because of all the anxiety and the waiting and, just the whole thing was a lot. But it was so nice to have a place to go, to talk about it, and to feel seen and understood, and to know that other people are going through the same thing. I have so much planned for this community as well. There are a lot of different subgroups that you can be a part of that are specific to different things. And we're going to be doing live videos as well, just live video chats, kind of like an extension of the podcast almost. And I already have people who are interested in being a part of it. And it's just going to be a really amazing place. It already is an amazing place, but it's going to be 10 times better. So make sure that you check it out. There's a link in the show notes. You can also go to infjcommunity.com and find the link as well. Okay, so let's get to our guest. Our guest today is Olivia Powell. She is a good friend of mine and just such a wonderful and amazing person, and I really enjoyed talking to her. We spoke for about 2.5 hours, actually. Obviously, the episode isn't 2.5 hours long because I know that nobody would listen to it, but I picked out the best parts, and that's what you're going to hear now. There's also a bonus episode that's only available on YouTube that will be out on Thursday. So Olivia is a business coach for women who are looking to start a business or who already have a business and they just want to level up. She also has her own podcast that's called Slaying Your Side Hustle. You should really check it out because she has some amazing tips for starting a business or for starting a side hustle. You can find it on Apple Podcast or on Spotify. And just as a reminder, you can watch the video interview on YouTube at youtube.com/thequietonespodcast. And like I said, there's a special bonus episode that comes out on Thursday that's only available on YouTube. I also wanted to mention that I have been fighting this terrible cough for like 4 weeks now. And it was really bad when we were recording this episode. I did my best to edit out all of the issues, but you will notice just a little bit of it. And I wanted to apologize and to let you know that I do know about it and I don't think that it's too bad. So I just wanted to warn you.
Okay, so tell me how did you find out that you're INFJ?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit unconventional, but I actually found out because of my ex-fiance. So he did this personality test with his best friend. They were both narcissistic, funnily enough. And so I did it at his house that I was living in at the time, and it came up as INFJ. And before I even had time to read it, he's like, oh, that's really interesting. And I'm like, why is that? And he's like, because my best friend's the same personality type. Now, for me, I would never have picked that because I felt like we were both really different. But that's okay. You can still have different INFJs. So I actually read it, and I was like, for the first time in my life, because I always loved personality tests, but I always never felt like they were fully spot on. I always felt like they were like 80% correct with the 20% kind of going, not really.
Right.
Yeah, so part of me felt understood, but not all of it. All of me felt understood until I did the Myers-Briggs one. And then I was reading it, and every sentence and every line, I was like, whoa, like little light bulbs were going off in my mind. I was just like, holy shit, this is me. Like, boom, 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 boom. And then it just intrigued me to keep reading. And then I became a little bit obsessed for a while there. And I just kept reading everything INFJ. And at the time, I was really unhappy in my full-time career. And I was like, INFJ job matches. And I'm like, oh, what's an INFJ good at? And funnily enough, they were all things that I was previously interested in some way or another. And turns out life coaching was actually under the umbrella of a good career choice for an INFJ. So I was like, and it's just like all the puzzle pieces pulled together once I read that. And ever since then, I've always, kept it in the back of my mind, and I've done it again since the breakup, and I've been an ENFJ, but then an INFJ again. So it's always one or the other when I get the results back. But it's funny because I'm so borderline. It's like one moment I'm extroverted 49% and introverted 51%. And then it flips the next time I do it. So I just call myself an ambivert now because it really depends on the mood that I'm in terms of
Yes.
I still think I'm definitely more introverted though, because like I have moments of being extroverted, but I recharge my batteries like alone or in a quiet environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So it did quite a bit that changed your life when you figured that out.
Oh, heaps.
It's always interesting to me to hear about how it changes your life, because I know that for me, it changed my life so much. I was going through such a rough time that I was really searching for answers when I figured it out. And then ever since then, it's been like this huge learning experience. And it seems like everything has changed because of that, including my job too.
I think how it does that. I think it's just, for me, I was at a point in time in my life where I just felt really misunderstood. Like, not misunderstood, I just didn't feel like I was understood. And I didn't feel like I really understood myself, and it just left me so confused. And then when I read this personality profiling, it just brought me so much clarity. And I was just like, wow, I actually feel really understood. Like, I'm not an alien, like I'm not some weirdo. Like, there's other people out there like me, but we're just very rare. So I was like, so part of me was a bit like, oh, I feel special. And then the other part of me was like a bit sad and depressed because I was like, I don't, at the time, I didn't want to be the rare personality type because I wanted to be able to connect and be like everyone else. Do you know what I mean? But yeah. I just always knew that I wasn't going to be that way, and that was part of my little superpower. So it's like, it's okay, and I own that now. And it's like, and it's funny because ever since I've owned it, I feel like I connect with more people anyway. So it's really bizarre.
I feel the same way. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, is so many people were like, you know, you shouldn't be so quiet. You shouldn't be so shy. You know, it was just this constant barrage of you shouldn't do that, or you need to do this. And so then once I figured it out, it was like, oh, it's totally okay. It was like the permission that I needed to just own who I am and how I am. And I think part of it too is I'm kind of getting to that point in my life where I'm just like, you know what? I don't care what you think. This is me, and I'm okay being that way. And I want to tell everybody else that it's okay to be that way too.
It is. And like, society kind of tells us, you know, directly and indirectly, that we're all not good enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not symmetrical enough. We're not skinny enough. We're not educated enough. We're not funny enough. We're not flirty enough. We're not sexy enough. It's just kind of like, there's always these subliminal messages that it's like, we're just not enough as we are. And it's total bullshit, because it's like, if we're happy with who we are, who gives a shit what society thinks? Who gives a shit what Mary Jo next door thinks? Who gives a shit what that guy on the online dating site thinks? Like, the moment that you actually start to accept and celebrate the fact that you are a bit more shy, the fact that you are a little bit more introverted, a little bit different, whatever, like, that's when I feel like the doors open up. But when you do it without expecting anything, that's when it kind of happens, I found. Yes, for sure. I'm so excited to talk to you too, because you have shifted your business recently, and now you're a business coach, and that's something that I'm definitely interested in as well. And plus, we're really good friends too, and we have these amazing conversations. So I have a whole bunch of questions for you, and a lot of them are actually questions that I've struggled with myself, and I know that we've talked about before, so I'm really excited. When you sent me the questions, I was like, yep, I've struggled with those too. I read them and I was like, yeah, these are great questions. I was like, I've been through this, and I know that you are, and you know, I still am in some regards. Do you know what I mean? But we'll get to that when we get to the questions, and I think we can explain a bit more.
Yeah, so the first one is like the most difficult one for me, and it's something that a lot of people ask me about too. So when you're thinking about starting your own business, or even if you're just thinking about starting a blog or an inspirational Instagram, or maybe you're thinking about a podcast, any kind of way where you're kind of coming out of your shell and you have to put yourself out there. That was one of the hardest things for me to get past when I started my blog. But then once I got comfortable with writing, I was like, okay, I can do this. But then it was like, now I have to do videos. And I'm like, ugh. And we were just talking about that earlier. I'm talking about how I need to do more Instagram live videos. And it's difficult for me because I don't like to be on video, but also it's difficult to put myself out there and to be seen. How do you get past all of that? How do you work through that?
Yeah. Such a good question. And I think this is like the major one, probably the biggest one that holds people back, I think, that and perfectionism. So we'll get to that in a sec, because I know INFJs, that's one of their strengths and weaknesses, is what I like to say, not just a weakness. So there's a few things. So the way I think of it is like, okay, let me share a little story. When I first came out as a life coach, or as a relationship coach, technically, because it was my niche, it was a big deal for me, because I was like scared of what everyone would think of me. I was scared of judgment. I was scared of people learning about my story, because I'd gone through like this abusive relationship, nothing physical or sexual, but definitely emotionally abusive, you know, mentally and spiritually and all this sort of stuff, right? I was mistreated and didn't really know at the time. I talk about it on my podcast, you know, for another day. It's a long story. But for me, actually feeling like I had the confidence to step out of my little shell and dip my toes in the water, the day that I did that was a big day for me. And I was really proud that I did do it. However, and I should say 99% of the people that saw what I was doing was very supportive and commended me and my bravery to do it and blah, blah, blah. And so that felt really great. However, before that was all fully received, I got this scathing message from a psychologist over Instagram. And at the time, I didn't really understand about triggering. Like, I didn't understand that if that person's triggered by something, it's actually there's something going on within them. It's not actually got anything to do with you, right? Didn't never understand that. So I took this really personally. And I definitely have always considered and been told by the people that I'm sensitive, which I used to think was a bad thing, but I don't anymore. Because I've worked through that. So this psychologist sent me these audio messages, written messages, and I've kept them, and I will share them one day. In fact, I probably should share them this year in my group, because it's actually a really good example of not letting things or someone's opinion hold you back, right? So I'd spent 6 months building up to the point like, yep, I'm going to be a relationship coach. Yes, I'm going to be niching in narcissism and helping codependent women that have been abused. Yes, I'm going to put myself out there, share my story, and come what may, sort of thing. I knew that they'd be good and bad because I'd seen other people ahead of me be attacked by trolls, attacked by, you know, people that were triggered by them, even friends and family that didn't really agree with what they were doing. So I knew that that was eventually going to come my way at some stage, but I did not expect it so early on, because I literally received that message within, I think it was like 48 to 72 hours. Wow. And it went on and it went on and it went on. And she attacked me personally, basically saying that I had no ethics, saying that I was a horrible person for becoming a coach when it's got no grounds, how people with, you know, this sort of situation should only ever go to a therapist, how I was uneducated, how I was dumb, how I was tricking people for money, like the lowest of the lowest below the belt comments. And I remember I got that message that night. I was in my room actually where I am now, and I was absolutely like blown away. And for a moment there I was like, well shit, I've done the wrong thing. Like, who am I to be doing this? You know, that whole imposter syndrome comes up. Right. And I'm like, maybe she's right. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is a sign from the universe. Like, all these things went through my mind. And I reached out to one of my coaching trainers who I was Facebook friends with. And I said to her, I was like, this is a message I've received. I don't know if I'm meant to be doing this anymore, because I don't think I can kind of handle this sort of criticism. And she coached me through it, which was really lovely of her. She was like, you do realize that this has actually got nothing to do with you. This is that person's own perception of what a coach is and what they do. And she's obviously had a negative experience. And yeah, so I was extremely offended. I was literally at that T intersection of like, what do I choose to do from here? Do I shut myself down, crawl back into my shell and live a very small life because of fear of other people not totally agreeing? And plus I was a big people pleaser too. So having one person out of like, so having like 99% of people being positive and supporting me, I was overlooking that because of the 1% horrible message that I got from someone I didn't even know, who didn't even know who I was or what my ethics and values were, who didn't even know what my intentions were, my visions for helping people. Yeah. It was like this close to literally crawling back in my shell and choosing a different direction. But because I'd done some mindset work, I had to really remind myself of that and overcome and work through that sort of limiting belief. I had to realize, okay, cool. So this psychologist has got a limiting belief going on, and her limiting belief was that coaches can't help women from narcissistic relationships. And I was like, well, that's bullshit, because I worked through my narcissistic relationship and my abuse, and I never used a therapist, and I'm on the other side. And if I can do it, other people can do it. And that was without any help. So I was like, well, if I can be a coach and help people in that way who don't feel the need for a psychologist, then I can absolutely do that. And it's just one person's opinion out of, 100. So, be what may. If that's how she feels, that's okay. Like, I don't have to not do what I want to do just because of one person. And it was a really good lesson, because I learned that you can't people please your way through life or through business, and you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to agree with you, and that's okay. And even if I did crawl back into my shell, it's like people would probably criticize me for that as well. Do you know what I mean? So you just win.
Yes.
So you've got to kind of listen to your own intuition and recenter yourself and realize, okay, that person was triggered because of their own triggers. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't actively go out of my way to hurt that person. My intentions were always pure, and she reached out to me and found me and then sent that to me. And I made a decision that I would never criticize someone who was wanting to step out and do something like that ever. Do you know what I mean? And the people that are ahead of you will never come back and criticize you, or they shouldn't anyway, because they know the road of actually having to put themselves out there and what that's like. And the fact that you do it is like hugely commendable. Yeah. Like, it's a big deal. So if someone comes down hard on you, they obviously haven't done that themselves, because if they had, they wouldn't be imposing all of their limiting beliefs and negative views on you like that. So in terms of putting yourself out there, there's a lot of fear around this particular thing. It's fear of judgment from others. It's fear of being seen. It's easier for INFJs, because they're an introvert, to kind of be to slink away from the spotlight and just do the behind the scenes stuff, you know. But when you run your business, and it depends what business you've got, like if you've got an Etsy store and you're just selling products, you don't necessarily have to show your face, and that might be something that someone might prefer. But if you're like an online coach, or you know, something where you are the service, it's really important to promote yourself. And it feels a bit weird at the beginning because you're so not used to doing that. It's like when you have a job interview and you've got to sell yourself, it just doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
But it's realizing that you can do it your own way. You don't have to do it the way that all the other extroverts are doing it. You don't have to do it the way that other people are doing it. You know, you can pick and choose what feels right for you, but at the same time, there's a difference between letting fear stop you and paralyze you and get in the way, as opposed to just figuring out what your style is. So that's a big one. What's the other thing? So fear of not being accepted and belonging, that's also another fear that everyone has. But once again, like I found that when I got out of my own way and worked on my mindset and worked through my confidence issues and all that sort of stuff, that's when I felt like the world became my oyster and things started to open up. And if you don't put yourself out there, no one knows about your offer online. Like if you've got an online business and you are the service, and even if you sell a product, no one's going to know about it until you put it out there. And I'm big on attraction marketing, right? Like that's my number one thing. I love attraction marketing because, you know, and I believe in karma as well, and signs in the universe and all that energetic exchange stuff. So it's like, if you put your stuff out there, people can see it, they can buy it, they can hire you, they can relate to you. They don't have to buy off you. They can just follow you and connect with you. And if you don't do that, they'll never get what they need or want. And so a big thing as well is realizing that as an INFJ, we're the rarest of the personality types, right? So we actually have gifts that the world needs, that other people need from us. And by keeping ourselves small and hidden away, it's like little bits of treasure that you're keeping. It's kind of like you could have, okay, I'm really like just flying by the seat of my pants here, but it's like, think about some treasure that's been found and they go put it in a museum and the whole world can enjoy that treasure. They can travel there, they can look at it, they can touch it, feel it, take photos with it, whatever, right? But if that treasure never gets found and stays hidden away, the whole world gets like misses out on that, you know? And I know it's like, who cares, it's treasure, but you know what I'm trying to say? It's like,
right, yeah.
Because they're rare, like that should be more of a reason to bring us out, not have us hidden away or ignored or, you know, behind the scenes all the time. Like I feel like for me as an INFJ or ENFJ, whatever floats my boat that day, really, it's like it has to be a conscious choice to be seen every day because it doesn't come naturally to me.
Yeah.
And once you work through those confidence things, because there's a difference, there really is a difference between like, so in terms of being comfortable, if we're stuck in our comfort zone, we limit our life. Whereas if we expand our discomfort zone, then we become more comfortable with that. So it's kind of like when you go to drive a car, you didn't feel like you were capable, you didn't know how to do it, you're not sure if you could, but once you actually started practicing and got the go of it and got your learners and your Ps, I don't know how it works over there in America, but once you got all that and you worked up those levels, you got your full license. And now you can drive a car with your eyes closed. It's not such a big deal. It's more automatic. And it's the same thing when you put yourself out online. Like I try to show up on my Instagram live nearly every day and show my face because I know it connects with audiences more. There's evidence shown by social media marketers that they have a better conversion rate when you are connecting with your audience with your face and not just words. And not everyone is learning the same way. We've got visual learners, we've got auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, and audio digital. So if you can cater to all of those type of INFJs or, you know, whatever your customers and clients are, you have a bigger conversion rate for not just connecting, but potentially selling as well.
Yes, you said so much stuff. I have to stop you just to say how awesome it is. Everything that you're saying is all stuff that I've been through and I'm working through. Part of it, I feel like for me, I had very little confidence when I started. And I almost look at confidence as like a muscle because I didn't start with very much, but then once I started to put myself out there, it was really difficult, but then it got a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And then once it's a habit, then it's like, okay, this is just something that I do. The first video that I've recorded, the first 6 or 8 videos, I have a teleprompter app that I use on my phone and they had to be absolutely perfect. And I did them like 6 or 8 times at least for like hours, just sitting there like stressing about, can I do this? And then trying to read the script perfectly, but then also trying to make it seem like I wasn't reading a script. So it was like this whole perfectionism thing going on. And then a couple of nights ago, I did my first Instagram live, and I was definitely nervous, but it was so much better. I never would have done that 6 months ago. I just wouldn't have been able to. And you know, the podcasts are the same way. Before it was like, okay, I have to have every single thing written out word for word, or I'm not going to be able to do it. And it would take hours. And now, especially this past month, I've recorded so many that it's like, okay, who are we talking to today? Let me just sit down and we'll figure this out.
Well, like comfortable with it. I was the same with my podcast, Sarah, literally. I remember the first couple of episodes, I wrote out the whole script and I'm like, pretend like I'm reading it, and I'm trying to pretend like I'm not reading it and like it's off the cuff. And it really wasn't. And I remember I listened back to the first couple of episodes, because I've got like 25 episodes now, I think. But I remember I listened back to the first couple and I was like, oh my God, that sucked. I was like, my energy is so different. Like it sounds so stiff and so still. So like, yeah. So it's like, it's recognizing that, you know, when you first begin, it's not going to be perfect, and it's okay. It's not meant to be. You're supposed to suck at the start, right? Until you start working on your competence. And then once you become more competent, your confidence just naturally comes. But I think it's important to like, don't fake it till you make it, because that never works. It feels so inauthentic and so incongruent. But if you can step into the highest version of what you would look like doing that, like imagine yourself in 2 years' time, how comfortable you'd be, how flowy it would feel, how confident and competent you'd feel. If you can channel your higher version of yourself in that moment, I wish I knew this back then, because that would have really helped me get started. That's going to feel way more, it's going to feel so much more empowering and like so much better than faking it till you make it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I hate that saying. I actually, I spent years going to a counselor, and one time that was her advice to me, fake it till you make it. And I was like, I paid you to say that?
I couldn't Google that, but thanks.
What I like a lot better is do it messy. Do it messy and do it scared. And even though it's not perfect, still put it out there, because you can't make the one that, well, it's never going to be perfect, right? But you can't make the one that you're really comfortable with, it's really good, until you've made the one that's messy. And then the next one is a little bit better, and the next one is better, and then it just keeps getting better. And then maybe 6 months down the road, you'll be like, okay, this isn't terrible. I'm happy with this. I'm proud of this.
Yeah, it's like starting a new job. Like you get so nervous about the first day. Am I going to fit in? Am I going to do okay? What are people going to think of me? Like all these thoughts run through your head, and you just got to realize you've got your L plates on. You're a beginner, you're a learner. You know, everyone's got to start at step 1. You can't jump from step 1 to step 10. Like Beyonce didn't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like look at where she started and look at where she's at now. Look at Oprah, you know, where she started out and where she is now. Like, not that I'm saying we're all the next Oprah or Beyonce or whatever, but it's kind of like looking at, you know, everyone had to be a beginner before they could be an expert or be proficient or whatever. And it's okay if you suck at the beginning. Like you're meant to suck at the beginning. Like it's happen that way. You know, it's like babies. Like they learn to walk gradually, and then they fall over and they dust themselves off and they get back up again. They don't just give up because they sucked the first couple of steps. And imagine that. Imagine what the population would be like if we all gave up on walking. Like we'd be bloody useless.
Yes. I heard that story not too long ago on a different podcast, and the lady was saying, she's like, I think it was Kathy Heller who was talking about it, who's one of my favorite podcasters, and she was saying that, you know, when you have a baby and they're learning to walk, when they try to walk and they fall down, you don't just say, oh, you know what, that's okay, walking's not for you, we'll try something else.
We'll get you a scooter and we just have to like use one leg to push yourself along.
You don't do that. You just keep encouraging them and keep encouraging them until they actually can walk. And you know that they can, so you just keep telling them that they can until they believe it. And I feel like
be that parent for yourself.
Yes.
You've got to give yourself some self-grace and realize it's not going to be perfect. And you know what, like perfectionism was a big thing that held me back in business previously. I feel like I had to get every single, you know, post perfect. I had to get every picture perfect. I had to say all the perfect things. That held me back with coaching as well, because I had my scripts there, and I realized that coaching doesn't work that way. It's very intuitive. It's very flowy. It doesn't work like a system. It's like people are messy, people are complicated, and you don't have a book to like walk people through that. Do you know what I mean? You have elements of it that you can bring in at different times, but we don't work that way as women either, and humans in general.
Right.
And so massive imperfect action is a big one that I learned about actually from an ex-boyfriend. He gave me access to one of his online programs, and it was like, this probably doesn't sound very good, but it was this particular person that was running the program. She was actually like a really big famous gambler, and I'm not a really big gambler myself at all, but the principles that she taught, I took with me. And she kept repeating the saying, massive imperfect action, massive imperfect action, massive imperfect action. And it stuck with me. And then I started practicing it. I started just whipping up a post and chucking it up there before I backed out and talked myself out of it. I started, making the big, massive impact. Like, this probably wasn't like as big as what some people would think, but for me, putting myself online, on like face on camera, that was a big deal. That was big, massive, imperfect action for me. And here's 2 funny stories. Have I told you the 2 funny stories about how my Facebook Lives not failed, but weren't perfect?
I don't think so. I saw one about a spider. And
yeah.
I think I was watching that one, or I saw the Instagram story about it. I can't even imagine.
So there's 2. I'll tell you the first one. So in my very first business, I was with a network marketing company selling skincare and makeup that was long-lasting, anti-aging. I loved it, but I burnt myself out. It's a whole thing. And the very first Facebook, because the very first Facebook Live feels like a very big, overwhelming, scary thing, right? Mm-hmm. Now I can pop on, it's no big deal. I still get a little bit nervous, but I talk myself through it and go, fear's normal, do it anyway, blah,
right.
blah, blah. Anyway, so this very first live, I was showing how the long-lasting lipstick worked, because it was supposed to instantly dry on your lips, right? And red's my favorite color, so I was putting red on, which probably wasn't the smartest choice, because it's very obvious when you make a mistake. Anyway, so I put it on, and I was showing the audience or the watchers or whatever how the lipstick dries straight away and it doesn't smudge or come off, right? But I didn't give it enough time to dry. And so straight after applying it, I got like a tissue, dabbed my lips on it, and it all came up with lipstick. And then I accidentally freaked out, knocked the camera, it fell on the ground. And I had to improvise in that moment, because life is messy, right? So I picked it up. I'm having a bit of a laugh. I'm feeling super nervous. I could have just like wet myself. And the people that were watching, and by the way, it was on my Facebook, like personal thing. So it's like 1,000 so people watching it. So it wasn't, well, not at the time, but I had access to that amount of people.
Right.
And everyone was cracking up with me. They had all the little laughy faces floating up on the screen. And I'm like, oh my God, I could either die in this moment, or I could just friggin' own it. And I just owned it. And I think people respected that, as opposed to, me, legging it out the door. So I just kind of said to them, I'd do another one, I'd take it off and I'd do it all over again properly so they can see how it really works. But it was embarrassing, because I was supposed to be selling this and being the leader in how to use the product, and I totally flunked it. That was years ago. And then recently, last year, when I was working with a coach, I was doing a 1 hour free like class thing in my major group. And it was all going very, very well. It was at night time. And anyway, out of nowhere, a spider, I don't know where it came from. It must have been in the top that I had in my drawer and pulled out to put on. A spider crawled up over my shoulder and ran across my neck. And I saw it on the camera and I could feel it, and I totally flipped out.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm not a spider fan at all. And yeah, so that was a pretty entertaining watch for the people watching that class. But I just owned it again. I was like, you know what, this is real life. And I feel like when you screw up, or, you make a mistake, or unexpected things happen, I feel like people relate to that even more. Because I remember her name was Chantel Patu. She's still doing the business that I was doing. She's one of the top leaders. She's got like a multi-million-dollar team and all this sort of stuff. And she does so many lives, and she has lives where her kids come in and interrupt, and the dog barks and shit happens, and you're like, she's just a normal mum. Do you know what I mean? She's just a normal person that's making a lot of money, doing what she loves. She's normal. And that's what makes them so relatable, is like, they're not perfect, and actually being perfect is a little bit boring. So that's something that I think listeners could really get from that, is like, you don't have to be perfect to be a business owner. You don't have to be perfect to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be perfect to be a leader. You don't have to be the perfect person or woman or INFJ. As long as you have something that you can help people with, that's all you really need. And a bit of, you know, guts, really, just to be prepared to be bold. And that's all you need.
What if you don't know what it is that you want to do, or you don't feel like you know enough about a subject, or you don't have enough to share? How do you start with that? Because I feel like, you know, that's plays into a lot of what we were talking about there too. It definitely did for me as well.
Such a good question. So if I'm being really, do you want the honest answer? Like the really honest one?
Yes, the honest answer. Because for me, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. We were talking about going to college, and the guy that I was talking to, he said, well, I wish that I would have went to college because I feel like it would have made me a lot more respectable or something like that. I forget the exact word that he used, but that was what he meant. And I said, well, I don't necessarily agree because I spent 10 years in college and I've never used any of my college degrees. So and when you go to college in the United States, you have to pay for it. So I still have almost $100,000 in college loans for something that I've never actually used, right? So is it really something that you need, you know?
Well, I've got a few thoughts on that. So personally, these days, so back in the day when I was growing up, it was like getting we call it a university degree, right? You guys call it college, whatever you want to call it, bananas.
Right.
So back then it was like prestigious. It was like, oh, you got to go get a degree because that sets you apart. But now every man and his dog has got a flipping degree or a couple. It doesn't really make you special or stand out. It's kind of starting to become somewhat of like a prerequisite or the norm.
Yes. And I'm going to interrupt you a little bit there because in the Midwest where I grew up, very few people have a college degree. And now it's like maybe 30% have a bachelor's degree. And then I moved to Boston, which is in the Northeast. And there are like 100 colleges in Boston, literally. And now everybody here, like 67% of people have a bachelor's degree. So if you want to be special, you have to have a master's degree. And I'm like, oh, wait, now I have to go back to school just to be special? What happened?
I know. It is a bit like that. I reckon here, I'd say a good 80% have bachelor degrees. A couple have got postgrads, a couple of PhDs, all this sort of stuff. And you can spend a shitload of money on qualifications that, it depends what you're doing, right? Like, if you want to be a surgeon, yes, you probably need that. I mean, if you want to be a lawyer, yes, you probably need that. Not probably, you definitely do. But, you know, for some, it's like if you want to be an online coach, you really don't need that much qualifications, if any. Now, I say that carefully because the old me was like, yes, you have to have this particular certification. But now that I've gone through, so just so everyone knows, I have a bachelor, I have a postgraduate, and I'm also finishing my diploma. Paperwork's just being processed. For me too, so I didn't always want to be a coach. I never knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, never knew any of that sort of stuff, right? I did my nursing and my midwifery, thinking that's all I'd ever do, and then realized this isn't actually for me long-term on a full-time basis. You know, casually here and there, sure, that's fine. But depending what you want to do. So if you want to be a writer, for example, or you want to be, you know, an online, you know, whatever, you don't necessarily need a degree to do that. You just need to be to have a strong why as to why you want to do it, right? Because that's what's going to pull you through, because it does take work, time, energy, effort, focus. And the other thing is like how do I explain this? You don't get more credibility just because you've got a credential, I don't think, personally, because everyone's got those now. So it doesn't make you special. It doesn't really set you apart unless you go above and beyond. And if you do get the master's, and it's another God knows how many thousands of dollars that you may or may not use, or may not, you know, because the majority of people, you know, that I see and talk to and read about, I'd say there's a big crisis on our hands because a lot of people are realizing, oh, this isn't the career that I want to be in, or, oh, I can't do this for the next 50 years, or I thought it was going to be this way and it's actually not this way. My reality is so different to what I thought it was going to be. And so, and, you know, and mental health and everything rises because we spend the majority of our week at work. Right. So it's going to be really interesting. And even in the healthcare industry, I think it's projected that by 2050, we're going to have a huge crisis, and a lot of people would have left the industry. So anyway, that's another tangent. So yeah, if you're thinking that you need to have degrees, depends what it is that you want to do. But when it comes to being a coach, it's not necessarily true. Like, I personally think that I've actually learned, like, I've learned a lot through my coaching college for sure, they taught me the very basics. It was a great introduction, but I've learned so much more from different online programs, different mentors, different coaches. They've actually taught me more, and they don't offer certifications, you know? So as long as you can get people results and you can help them, you don't necessarily need a qualification.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think.
For sure. For sure. I definitely agree with that, especially when you're talking about online businesses. For me, with all of my college degrees, all of my education, I went into digital marketing, and I taught myself how to do all of it. And I do graphic design, and I learned how to do that through YouTube. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Thank you
really,
for Google and YouTube.
it's
Did
really
that
just,
answer the question?
yes, it's really just getting past yourself, honestly. It's saying, okay, I'm going to do this. And then having the confidence after that to say, this is what I do. It took me the longest time to tell people that I'm a graphic designer. And I would always preface it with, well, I'm not formally trained as a graphic designer, but I know how to do graphic design. And then they would lose all confidence in me because they're like, what does that really mean? But now when I say I'm a graphic designer, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. That makes sense, right? So a lot of it is how you communicate it to people and how much confidence you have in yourself, I feel like, too.
Well, you can think about it like this, right? So I started my diploma with like 20 other people or something like that. I started my business and officially, so after the first NLP like weekend where we get trained in neurolinguistic programming, the college was like, you need to go out and find people to practice this on. You need to go get clients, even if it's pro bono or they're paid, whatever. Because what happens is if you don't apply it straight away, you'll lose confidence and then it'll be harder to jump back up on the horse. So I reckon like maybe 5% of the class actually took that on board and did it. And I was one of that 5%. And if I hadn't have done that, right, it would have really got in my way. It would have slowed everything down. But because I did that, I gained a bit of confidence and I was like, I want to start getting paid clients before I finish my diploma. So that's when I launched my business. And then from there, it's just been like crazy. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's great. Like other people would have finished the diploma before me, but so many of them either haven't finished it or they've finished it and have done nothing with it because they don't teach you how to start a business. They just teach you how to, you know, do the coaching stuff. They don't show you all the back end stuff,
right?
Which is fine. They do the best that they can on a mass basis. They can't work one-on-one with everyone. So that's why you get a business coach, I guess. But there's so many people that have invested in that course, paid, you know, thousands of dollars for it and have done nothing with it. So, and then you get the other 5%ers that do a lot with it and might not finish yet or might finish a bit later. So, and as I said, the qualification doesn't always mean everything. But if you are someone that likes to have that sort of certainty or wants that certificate and be able to have that title on your bio or whatever, by all means, go ahead and get a certification through the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. They're the worldwide organization. And I think if you're new to coaching or have never had coaching, don't know how to coach or don't know what the difference is, definitely go there. Like, it's not a hard course. It's very enjoyable, but yeah.
So my next question, how do you get started? You want to start, you know that you want to start a business, you know that you want to start something, even if you don't think of it as a business right now, maybe you just think of it as a side hustle. Maybe it's just a blog or just a podcast. How do you even get started? How do you know? And do a lot of people think that you have to start with a website and social media on every platform, and you have to have business cards and stationery and all of this stuff, and they start calculating how much all of this costs. Do you really need all of that to get started? Is that like, you don't need any of that?
Well, I can tell you, I've rebranded so many times, it's ridiculous. Like, it would have to be 6 to 8 times. Just because when I first started out, the name wasn't, you know, with compliance with the company, the network marketing company I was first with. So I changed that over. And then as you evolve and change, your business does too. So for me personally, it's taken me a little while to kind of figure out what my thing is. I didn't get it, you know, perfect from the get-go. I had to test the waters, trial and error, give things a go, find out if it was for me or not, see what felt congruent and authentic and what didn't. Could I do this forever? Do I want to leave my job for this? Like, there was all these sort of questions I had to answer, but I was only ever going to get to the point where I am now by actually going through all those steps. I couldn't jump to the end, right? So at first I thought, oh, I knew I was interested in starting a business. I knew that I didn't want to be a full-time shift worker forever. It wasn't sustainable for me. I was getting sick all the time. It had a big drain on my life in that respect. So I was looking for something else. And it's really about just giving something new a go. You're not going to find the answers by sitting on your bum at home doing nothing. You have to go out and give things a try. And it's okay if you go out and give things a try and you quote unquote fail, or you don't like it, or it's not for you, because that's one thing that you can cross off your list that you've given a go. Because when you find out, you know, like love, for example, sometimes we've got to go through a couple of partners to find out what we don't want before we can figure out what we do want in a partner and what's right for us.
That was the scariest thing for me starting my business. And I even go back to when I was in college, because I was like, you know what? I want to do the perfect thing the first time, and I'm not going to waste any time. So I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about it and trying to figure it out. And you know what happened? I ended up with 3 college degrees because I couldn't figure it out. And it was kind of the same thing with my business. Like, I've started 6 or 8 blogs before I actually landed on the one that I really like. And even with that, it's taken on a couple of different shifts as well. So yeah, that's great. I mean, you definitely have to have that mentality of just do it. Just put some effort into it and just start, even, and knowing that it may not be perfect the first time, but you know, and be open to the fact that it could shift, because it could shift a few times.
Yeah, and it probably will shift again. Like, if I think about my evolution, it was like skincare and makeup. That was a product-based business. And then I moved to life coaching with no niche. And then I moved into relationship recovery coaching from narcissistic love and men and all that. And then I've pivoted into business coaching. And even with that, your niche can change, because I thought I'll just be a business coach for anyone. And then I realized, no, I need to be a business coach for people that want to market themselves online, you know, have a side hustle.
Yeah.
So, or just women. And that sort of thing. So you're still gonna, and even my business coach and her business coach and other business coaches that I know, and not even business coaches, just even life coaches or whatever, they're constantly like, they're always evolving. So your brand, your online presence will as well. And that's okay. But once you find, you're never going to find your thing until you give it a go and figure out what those things are. And there's no shame in that, like pivoting, changing direction, trying something new out. Like, I remember I tried belly dancing, I tried tap, jazz, ballet, hip hop, until I realized, shit, salsa dancing is my thing. I love salsa dancing, you know, and I never would have discovered that if I didn't
Right?
go first. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as failure. So if you want to try and get the first thing perfect, like, as you just said, you've got all these degrees, you've got thousands of dollars worth of debt. It's like, you know, if you're waiting for things to get perfect, like, life doesn't stop moving until you decide what it is that you want to do. Like, it's still going to move. So you can spend a lot of time, you know, sitting stuck and waiting and staying, or you can actually spend that same amount of time figuring out the things that you do and don't want to do, and it'll bring you closer to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So,
and I didn't even start figuring out what I wanted to do until I figured out what I didn't want to do. And I was like, well, the process of elimination is rough, but but if you just sit there in analysis, you know, you won't figure it out.
Analysis, that's a real thing.
Yeah,
overthinking, because INFJs, we do tend to do that. We overthink things. We want to make the wrong decision. We want to get everything right. It's that perfectionistic nature that we've got. But we're also very creative, and we can be quite ambitious. So it's like combining the two. So in terms of websites, so I've had so many different business cards. It's such a waste of money in hindsight, but it served a purpose for the time, and that's okay. That sort of stuff has happened. My first business, I spent about $9,000 on out of the gate. I just took the bull by the horns and went full pelt. And, you know, in hindsight, would I do things differently? Yes. Did I learn a valuable, expensive lesson? Yes. Would I change it? No, because I needed to learn that I need to progressively build, and that's what I've been doing, and it's worked, as opposed to just like all or nothing and then fall flat on your face a little bit.
Right.
So in terms of websites, it depends. Once again, it depends what business you might want to run. That'll determine what sort of strategy you'll play out. So if you want to be an online coach, you don't necessarily need a website. I know 6 and 7 figure coaches that have made their businesses without websites, and have just used 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 different social media platforms. You don't have to have 10, because you can't spread your time and energy across all of those all the time, as you know, you and I were talking about before this interview. So it's about, if you're really stuck and you're like, I just know that I'm miserable in my job and I just need to do something different, write down the things of your job that you don't like, that you don't want to be performing again, that you can't imagine yourself doing for the rest of your life. And then jump on a thing like Amazon, look at different books, different topics, different things that, and even write down your passions and your interests. What are the things that you really thoroughly enjoy that you would be happy probably doing for the rest of your life if you made money or didn't make money? But then the next step is like, you don't also want to treat your business like a hobby, because hobby means it's not really a serious thing. If you're someone that wants to start a side hustle and build your side hustle so that you can go part-time in your business, part-time in your job, and then eventually go full-time, you're never going to get there if you treat it like a hobby, because it means it's optional. Whereas if it's like a, full-on commitment, and it's like, I'm going to make this thing happen, I'm going to make this thing work no matter what, and I'm going to do what I freaking love, that lights me up and that I'm passionate about, no one's going to freaking stop me and get in my way. I'm not going to take no for an answer. And so if you are something that lights you up and you freaking love, it's not going to feel like a waste of time. It's not going to feel like it's draining all of your energy all of the time, because for the most part, you're going to love what you do. But I should also say, don't get stuck in the trap of that whole, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, because that's complete, excuse my French, bullshit.
Yeah.
I love what I do, but yes, it does take work. Is it work that I enjoy 90% of the time? Yes. Is there 10% that I don't particularly love or don't feel like doing sometimes? Absolutely. I'd love to find a business owner that, says that that's not true. Like, I think everyone that I know that's in business and all the life coaches that I work with, peers with, friends with, they all feel the same way about that.
Yes, I love it. I love everything that you said. It works out so well. It fits exactly everything that I've experienced and that I go through. And you're such an amazing coach too. Firsthand experience, not that I've paid you, although I definitely should have.
Okay.
Every time I get stuck, I'm texting Olivia going, okay, what do I do? So tell us a little bit more about coaching. Why would somebody hire a business coach, and what kind of services do you provide for them?
Yeah. Why would someone hire a business coach? So once again, it really depends on the business. Do you know what I mean? So you want to find someone that has done what it is that you want to do, because why would you take advice or coaching or mentoring from someone that doesn't know what they're talking about, right? So, so for example, for me personally, I only really work with like small businesses. I don't work with huge corporate companies, because I'm not, well, firstly, I'm not at that point yet, but two, it's not really what I'm interested in, because I want to get away from that, if that makes sense.
Right.
What attracted me to coaching was the fact that I could be my own boss, do things my own way, set my own schedule, have freedom, have choice, be that like unleashed INFJ sort of energy, not feeling enclosed and told how to be and that sort of thing. So that really, this is why this works so well with my personality, because I've played by the rules. I've been the good girl growing up. I've done all the right things, and it hasn't really gotten me very far. And so, yeah, I'm all about freedom and helping other people, but in my own way. So, yeah, so in terms of who I work with, it's usually women between the age of 25 and 40. And they're women who are either miserable in their jobs, want more out of life, are interested in starting a business, but don't know how and have never had any business experience before, or they might already have a business and they've had some experience before. They just want to get it to a point where they're making money or can drop their hours at work, or eventually maybe even want to leave work, and that's okay too. So what I particularly help them with, and once again, it depends on the business coach you hire. So I really recommend, the listeners to this, that you actually do your homework. Don't just sign anyone up. You want to so firstly, don't sign up someone you don't like either. Don't hire someone you don't like. Make sure you hire someone that you connect with, that you like, that you see their results and you're like, oh, I would really like that for myself. But also someone that's going to give you a kick in the pants, because a coach is also not your friend. They're not there to feed into your insecurities, any negative story you're telling yourself that's keeping you stuck, but they're supposed to give you a kick in the pants in a loving way, to get you moving, to hold a mirror up to yourself and go, and this is what I've benefited from with my coaching, is like the person holds a mirror and shows me where I could be doing better, how I could improve things, what's holding me back, what's my story, limiting beliefs, because it all starts with mindset. Like, we can play out any strategy we want in business, But if we haven't got the mindset, the strategy is not going to work. So what I mean by that is like the old me was always posting on Instagram and Facebook, didn't know what I was doing on there, just thought I'll just chuck something up there and someone will like it one day. And somewhat that's true, but there's actually a structure to post that hooks people's attention, gives them value, makes them feel understood, gets in touch with their pain points, helps them turn things around, has got a call to action at the end of it to be able to guide them to the right place to get the help that they might need. So for me, I started my mindset stuff way before, like years and years ago. When I first started the idea of like, oh, I might want a business, I turned my car into a university. So I was working full-time and overtime. I was traveling 4 hours a day. So it was a really tough, it was a really tough year, that particular job. I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive 2 hours to a mining site in the like 3-degree weather. So I was like, okay, cool. I've got 4 hours a day that I'm wasting on travel. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to waste this time. I'm going to utilize it effectively. And so that's when I started feeding my brain, and I started turning my car into a university. And I started listening to audiobooks on the topics that I was interested in, listening to people that had the results that I wanted. And I started getting my mindset right. I started learning about I started studying these people. I'm like, what did they believe to have? Like, what did I need to believe to get what I wanted? What's different with them than me? What things do I need to change, shift, evolve, progress so that I can have that too? So that's a good place to start, is definitely mindset. And, you know, I'm not saying people that play out strategies can't be successful. They definitely can, but there will be blocks and things and gaps. Do you know what I mean? That is probably stopping them from progressing further. Yeah. So having your own coach helps you. So having your own coach helps you more aware of what your things are, what's been holding you back subconsciously, because a lot of people think that they are very conscious. However, I think it's like 80% of our subconscious mind actually runs us. We're just not even aware of that. So when you can bring that to the surface through a business coach, they can help you work through all those sort of things. It's going to help you get into a better energy, a better mindset. And then the strategy is just the easy stuff. That's just the stuff that plays out, you know, like automatically, really, once you've got all the other stuff kind of down pat.
I think it's even more important for us as INFJs to have somebody on the outside too, because I am really good at looking at you and saying, here's your problem, here's what you need to do. But I cannot look at myself and say, what is my problem? What do I need to do? And I know that a lot of people struggle with that, but I know for a fact that it's more apparent or more prominent for INFJs, because that's part of how our personality works. We have extroverted feelings, so we're always looking at other people, and it's a lot harder for us to look at ourselves. It takes a lot more time. So when you have somebody who's just right there in front of you saying, no, hold on, this is what it is, or hey, have you thought about this? You know, just somebody to even redirect you, or to bring up something that you hadn't even considered, it's really a game changer, honestly.
It really is. Like, I thought I was once I started my life coaching training, I thought I was a pretty enlightened person and really self-aware. But compared to what I've learned, like for that one-on-one attention, and this is why I recommend a business coach, you know, possibly even over getting a life coaching certification. If you had to choose one or the other, I've found the business coach much more beneficial for me personally, because as I said, you go to school, you go to uni, get taught the math stuff, but until someone's with you, guiding you personally, you know, helping you through all that sort of personalized stuff, it's a huge game changer. So when I had that for me, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't notice that pattern. Or I did, but I didn't know what to do about it. Or I didn't think it was such a big deal, but it actually was holding me back. And one thing that I used to do was this drama llama cycle, because that was connected to anxiety. So like if something didn't work out, or I had, I don't know, some sort of issue pop up that I, you know, catastrophized into being the end of the world, I was able to go, oh, this is just my old pattern playing out. I can choose better than that. I don't have to play into that. Do you know what I mean? Like I can actually pull myself in, have more self-control over my feelings and my thoughts, and realize that I was wasting so much energy on those little things that didn't need to be that big, because most of the time they worked out. But I just spent all this energy, like, you know, freaking out about it when I really didn't have to. And when I realized that, I was able to conserve that energy and use it in other parts of my business and make them blossom more and nurture that sort of side of things. So that was a huge lesson for me personally.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the specific things that you do. Is there different like packages that you offer, or is there different courses, or how does that work?
Good question. So things have changed for me. So when I first started out coaching, even the college was suggesting that you can sell a 1 month package, 2 month, 3, 4, whatever you wanted. I remember I was just feeling really confused about where I should start and what I should do. But when I chose to go into narcissistic relationship coaching, I realized you can't really have profound shifts or big transformations in such a short period of time, because there's actually a lot of stuff to go through. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, once again, how'd you get into that relationship? What led you to there? What ways of thinking have, you know, you like basically formed from this? You know, how these limiting beliefs that all men are shit going to hold you back in relationships in the future. Like, there's a lot to kind of go through and break down and explore. It's not a superficial conversation by any means. So back then I used to have like 3 to 4 month packages, and I found that a lot of my clients were re-signing with me. So I was like, maybe my packages are too short, you know, and I realized pretty quick that they were. But at the same time, I recognized that back then I was a person that wasn't prepared to sign on for a coach for 4+ months, because I was like, what if I don't like them? What if things don't work out? Will I get my money back? You know, that's a big commitment. I'm just not quite sure if I'm there yet, and that sort of thing. So that's why I kept things the way that they were back then. But since I've kind of realized the value of coaching and business coaching and where it can lead to and what it can give you, my views have changed on that now. And that's okay, because some of the listeners right now are probably thinking, I would never sign on to a 4-month package. That might feel really overwhelming for them, because they're like, that's a long chunk of time of the year. But at the same time, if that person's able to resolve these issues for you and it changes the path and the trajectory of your life from that small period or pocket of time in the book of Sarah or Olivia, that's life changing. Do you know what I mean? That can literally change someone's life. And it's such a small investment in that, personally, is what I think. So now that I've experienced that myself, my views on it have all changed and evolved past that. So at the moment, what I'm offering is actually a 6-month package. So the way I explained it to a recent client was, you don't need a business degree to start a business. It's legally not required. And a lot of people that do the business degrees, they come out of it 3-4 years later with, you know, as we know, thousands of dollars in college or university debt. And they're spit out at the end of the university system, and they're left there going, what do I do? How do I start a business? Like, what do I want to do it in? And if, once again, we're just playing out strategy and that person hasn't worked on their mindset, because once again, universities and colleges don't teach that, that's why the fail rate in business is so high. I think the recent stats is like 60% of businesses fail in their first 12 months. And I think it's like 80% in the first 5 years or something. Don't quote me. It's around those sort of numbers. Yeah,
right.
It's on Google. Feel free to look it up. But either way, they're pretty high. To build a long, sustainable business, which is what I'm in the process of doing, I realize that it really does start and stop with me. So I think I'll always have a coach, because if I don't, that's when my business will stop growing. I know that for a fact. So what I said to this client was, I was like, you know, you can go ahead, go to uni, get your business degree, that's cool. Or you can work one-on-one with someone who knows what they're talking about, has results that you've gone through the lessons that you're going to go through, that, you know, because once again, someone that's starting out in business may not actually know what the pathway is ahead. It's all new. Like, where do I even start? All those fears of, I'm scared to put myself out there. They're things that are going to stop you from starting and launching a business, scaling it as well, like all that sort of stuff. So for 6 months, it's actually a drop in the ocean. It's really a small period of time. And so that's what I offer to begin with, because I know how overwhelming it can be when you think of 6 months. You're like, that's half a year. Holy shit, I better be really serious and committed to this to make this sort of stuff happen for myself. And so it can be a little bit scary. But now that I know the value in it, like, that's the minimum that I would offer for a business client. So the sort of stuff we would work on together, as I said, is the triad: mindset, energy, and strategy. And that's just skimming the surface. So looking at that person's psychology, their belief system, their values, how to build a congruent brand, how to have an online presence, which what we talked about was a very small element of that, you know, how to put themselves out there. How to build, as I said, an online brand, how to connect with an audience or their customers, warm leads, hot leads. And as much as I don't like the language, it's like converting. So firstly, it's like dating your audience. So acknowledging that not everyone that follows you or watches you or listens to you is necessarily going to end up as a client or a customer. And that's actually okay, because you don't always want those people to become a customer or a client. Now, I know that sounds really bizarre to people, because they're like, well, that's the whole point of a business, but it's actually not. from my perspective. I prefer to work with the people that want more for themselves. So I recognize that there's going to be some lifers that might listen, watch, connect, you know, whatever, but they're not ready to make their own business or, you know, sign up or whatever. And that's cool. Like, I still value them, you know, even though they're not like a client or customer, because obviously something that I'm doing relates, like they relate to it in some capacity. They're getting something from it, whether it be educational, entertaining, or empowering, or whatever it is. So that's cool. But then you've got other people that are like, I'm ready for this next level. But, you know, I've had 2 clients that I've dated, you know, unintentionally, I guess, the last maybe 4 to 6 months, or actually, no, one of them has followed me for the last 3 years, and she only reached out last year, and now she's a client. Like, she needed that time to kind of watch and build that know, like, and trust with me before she could take the plunge, which I totally get. Like, and I totally respect that too, because I'm kind of like that as well. Do you know what I mean? Probably less so now, but the old me was definitely like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about building that connection with people. I hate that saying, like, back when I was doing network marketing, it kind of, there's these theories that go around that it's a numbers game. So you just check off you contact all these people, check them off the list that you've contacted them. You know, 1 out of 50 might say yes. For me personally, I hate that shit, because you're treating people like numbers.
Yeah.
You're treating them like they're a thing to you. It's like you're taking advantage of them.
Right.
Yeah, which feels icky. It feels gross. It feels disconnecting. And I don't like being sold to like that. Like, I get messages all the time from people that are just trying to sell me something, and I'm like, you haven't even asked anything about me. You've just shoved this offer in my face and gone, bye. And that's not how I work, and that's not how I like to buy. And I know this too, because when I go to the shopping center and I touch an item, before I even know if I like it, they're like, can I put that in the back room for you? And I'm like, bitch, I don't even know if I like this yet. In the most respectful way possible.
When I went on a cruise a couple of years ago, and it was the first time that I had ever been to Mexico, and there are these people that it's just their jobs to stand out in the middle of the mall or the shopping center and pull you into the store and like shove stuff in your face, just like what you're talking about. And I'm like, I will buy something, but please just leave me alone.
It's intrusive.
Yes.
It's so intrusive. And I know people that sometimes are desperate for jobs, but it's like, please just do something that's not going to annoy the shit out of other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, just, you know, and, you know, if you're desperate and you need a job, you know, go for it. But at the same time, like, for me, I could never work a job like that, because I would probably hate myself at the end of the day, because I know what makes other people. So it's like, I just know that's not for me.
Right.
But at the same time, like, yeah, like, you know, when you get door knockers and they're there to promote something to you, but it's like an intrusion of your space.
Right.
That's why I'm a big fan of attraction marketing. So putting your stuff out there, speaking to your old version of yourself. So if you're going to be a coach or something, you've got to figure out what you've been through in life that you've come out the other side of, that you can potentially help other people through. Because if you've already done it, there's a way that you've done that, and there's massive value in that, and you can help people do the same thing if they're struggling with the same problems. So for me, as I said, I was, you know, engaged and had dated narcissistic men before, didn't know what a healthy relationship was or healthy love. It was very toxic. I didn't know what toxicity was in a relationship. So I had to learn all that stuff. And then I had to learn what a healthy relationship was, and how to have boundaries, and how to speak up for myself and my needs, and all this sort of stuff, right? So I learned all that, and I was like, cool, I can actually teach other women how to do the same thing. So that's where I started. So I think it's really about providing a shitload of value, as what you've done with INFJ Woman. Part of the reason why I started following your page was because you're really good at, you know, providing information on what an INFJ is, describing what their personality is like, why they're different, why they're rare, and I could connect with that. So I actually sent a message to Sarah, for the listeners that are listening or watching. I actually sent a message to Sarah and connected with her and asked her on my podcast. So in a sense, Sarah's already been using attraction marketing. That's why she's got such a large following. And people probably reach out to you as opposed to you having to search for people. So that's why I love attraction marketing, because I just think, like, even one of my most recent clients, she, after 3 years of watching me, going through all these transitions and pivoting, she finally reached out to me because she could connect with me. Yeah. She knew that I was plant-based. She knew that I liked to do dance parties in my bathroom. She, you know, knew that I liked cats. She knew that I was into mindset and law of attraction, you know, so she could connect to a couple of elements. It built that know, like, and trust. And then, you know, she's converted to a client, and it was never a salesy process with her. Yeah. And I had to learn the hard way. I was that salesy person in the very beginning because I was taught to be that way. I didn't know any better. I didn't have any sales experience. I did the whole numbers game and check people off a list and shit, like annoy people online. Never again. Because I remember someone taught me, it's like if it's not a hard no, it's just a not right now. So you can keep messaging them. But that's actually really intrusive on that person. And I hate getting that sort of stuff now. So I've learned the hard way. It's not the right way for me. But if you're ever going to sell, I really think it's about doing it in a way that makes you feel comfortable and a way that is authentic and congruent with your values. That's really imperative, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I started the same way that you did. I was researching my personality because I was in a really dark time in my life, and I needed to feel understood, and I needed to feel seen. And that's what I felt when I started reading all this stuff and collecting it. And I thought, if I could just help one other person, if there's just one person who needs to hear this stuff too, then I should put it out there. And then I realized there was a lot more than one person who needed to hear it.
35,000 plus. Like, that's your number right now. Imagine where it'll be this time next year. Like, I'm so excited for you.
I'm excited too. And part of it, I think most of honestly what keeps driving me forward, especially because you were talking about you have to like the work that you do, but sometimes it's still going to feel like work. And sometimes it feels a lot like work, but it's also so rewarding. And every time it feels like it gets really heavy and there gets to be too much, then there's somebody who sends me a message or an email or some comment that I read that says, you know, you've changed my life. I feel completely different about myself. And I'm just like,
wow,
yes, that's exactly what I wanted. And I'm so glad and I'm so happy because I feel the same way. It's done the same thing for me too.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Because I actually had a lady, so when I was working in the narcissistic relationship space, so I used to get messages all the time because when I first came out of my relationship and figured out what he was and exes and stuff, I felt so alone. And then when I realized, I started joining support groups and realized, whoa, there are literally hundreds of thousands of men and women who have been victims or targets of that sort of, personality.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I realized I wasn't alone once again, because once again, INFJs can tend to feel, alone because they are rare and all this sort of stuff. Right. And so I used to get messages from my podcast because it does, as you know, podcasts reach a global audience. I used to hear people from like London, Afghanistan, Canada, people in Australia, all over the place, right? And there was this one particular woman who sent me a message, and I'll always remember it because I was kind of just a bit like, wow, like I just had never even considered that before. And she said, and I've never heard from her again, and that's fine. She obviously just needed to get that out, and that's cool. But she was like, Olivia, she's like, if it wasn't for your podcast, I was going to kill myself yesterday, and my 2 sons wouldn't have been left with a mother. And I was like, I think I teared up over that. I'm feeling a bit emotional now. And I was like, fuck, really? It's over a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know how it's going to touch people. Yeah. But I was like, I never would have thought I'd hear that. Like, I never set out to hear something like that, but it was so incredibly special when I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it got me a little bit emotional.
And then you go back to the beginning of what we were talking about feeling like you don't have enough, or feeling like you can't put anything out there in the world, or that what you have to share nobody wants to hear, because that's so not true. I mean, both of us had that experience where we were brave for 5 seconds and put ourselves out there. And then every time we hit whatever the button is to go live on Facebook or Instagram, you have to be brave for long enough to get started, but it touches so many people. And I strongly believe that every single person has a special gift to share, and they have a message, they have a life experience that somebody out there needs to hear.
You know what I mean? Like, we all have unique gifts and abilities and insights, and INFJs are actually particularly very insightful individuals as well. So why not use that and make the world a better place? I know it sounds cliche and cheesy, but it's like, if your only purpose in life at the moment is just to get up out of bed, to go to work, to a job that you hate, to pay the bills, do the same thing next week and get the Sunday blues and hate life and wake up on Monday morning not wanting to be doing what you're doing and living Groundhog Day. Like, there's so much more to life than that. You have to find something more than just that. Like, it has to be more than that. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you start a business or a hobby or writing blog or whatever, it's got to be something that you love, because otherwise you'll be wasting your precious life away, you know, for what? Like, it's got to be rewarding and fulfilling at least a little bit. And it's okay for your business not to be 100% enjoyable all of the time, but for the majority of the time it should be. And for me, if I am feeling overwhelmed or stressed or hating a particular element, that's when I know that I need to step back and be like, you know what, I'm going to take the afternoon off, or I need to go have a cup of tea, clear my mind, recenter myself, ground myself, and then get back up on the horse. Or I might need a whole day off just to separate myself from work, business, things that are going on. And then I find I'm in a much better energy the next day. And that's when things flow easier too. Like you feel like replenished, you feel more energetic, you know, ready to take the day on again, and get back to people. So that's why energy is such an important one too, because if you're in a shittier energy, people pick up on that. If you're responding to messages when you're feeling exhausted, they're going to hear that in your tone. You know, it's going to affect the things that you say. So that's why, you know, mindset, energy, and strategy are a together thing.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Olivia is such an amazing person, and she has some wonderful advice about starting your own business. Here are a few takeaways. Number 1, being sensitive is not a bad thing. It's all about how you look at it. Number 2, it's important to promote yourself when you have your own business. You can do it in your own way and in a way that feels right for you. Number 3, don't let fear stop you. Number 4, INFJs are rare and have gifts that the world needs. Number 5, confidence is a habit that you build over time. Number 6, fake it till you make it doesn't work. Instead, think about how you'll feel in 2 years' time when you feel a lot more comfortable doing the thing that you want to do. Number 7, don't let perfectionism hold you back. Do it messy and do it scared. You can't make the thing that's really good until you've made the thing that's messy. Number 8, you don't have to know everything about your business before you get started. Start with what you have and what you know. A college degree isn't everything. Number 9, it's okay to try something that doesn't work, or try and find out that you don't like it. You can always shift to something else. And number 10, hiring a business coach can be very beneficial, but make sure you find one that you connect with. Do your research on them and make sure they have experience doing what you want to do. All right, you guys, that's all that we have for today. Please make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen so that you don't miss an episode. And also, just one more reminder, you can watch the video interviews on YouTube at youtube.com/thequietonespodcast. And there's also an additional bonus episode that's out on Thursday that's only available on YouTube. Also, make sure that you leave a review wherever you listen. It helps people to find us. Leave comments, likes, whatever it is, make sure that you're doing that. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.